To you by Globals.
Africa's maiden G20 summit. What are the stakes and global perspectives? Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, on yet another edition of your information sharing and discursive program. It is Global Insight. The world is actually evolving, and of course, Africa is surely taking its position on the table. In 2023, the African Union gained its space as a permanent member of the economic bloc, the G20, under the presidency of India. And on the same year, the gavel was handed to South Africa, a member of the group, as the next president that held the presidency from November 2024 to November 2025. And it ended with the summit that actually attracted global attention across the world, not just in Africa, the world in the last quarter of 20 November 2025, a rotational routine of the G20 marked the meeting of the bloc, which brought together many nations with the aim of ensuring economic growth and transformation among member states. The in actually this attracted some sort of global attention as the landmark event held in Johannesburg brought together leaders under the theme solidarity, equality, sustainability, and this historical summit that held from November 22nd to 23, 2025, witnessed influential decisions or discussions on pressing global challenges, which included climate change, economic inequality, energy transition, food security, among others. The summit at the end served as a litmus test for multilateralism as global leaders reiterated the evolving global alliances, stating the erosion of unilateralism and the realities of multilateralism in today's world. We ask this question: did the summit and the final declaration officially open the stage for a more practical multilateral engagement among countries of the world? Do the tenets of the G20 still hold, given the fragmented nature of the global world, affecting international policies and relations as well as global governance? What can we read of its outcome in terms of Africa's public policy image and diplomacy? And what is the status quo of the shifting dynamics in global leadership in line with the just ended Group of 20 summit that was boycotted by the United States of America, one of its members? And of course, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we'll be uncovering in the course of the program with a panel of experts. And I will join you right after the jingle to introduce this panel for us to get more details on what made actually headline news on the G20 and the way forward after South Africa's presidency and Africa's maiden summit, given the admission of the African Union as the permanent member that was in 2023 as highlighted. So stay tuned and I will join you right after the jingle. Welcome back. Without much ado, we uncover the panel, and I will be humbled enough to take us straight away to India by acknowledging the presence of Purnima Adan, who is President BRICS International Forum. Hello to you, dear Purnima. Thanks for honoring our rendezvous this day.
Thank you, Galleries and Pan-African Media. I am really honored to be present here today, and today's topic is very important, and I hope we will have very good discussion on this day.
Absolutely, yeah. Looking forward to having a constructive discussions that will bring more understanding about the global dynamics in the world with the G20 summit of 2025 in Johannesburg being a case study. We stay in India, acknowledging Professor Jagdish Khatri, author, speaker, and global analyst. Welcome to the program.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's really an honor to be on this platform, madam. And I would like to congratulate the people of South Africa, rather the whole African continent, for organizing a very, very successful G20 meeting. So, looking forward to good learning and sharing in this platform. My greetings to all the participants. Thank you.
Thank you so much for respecting our rendezvous. Indeed, it was a success. And of course, we continue to analyze constructively the events that marked it, all the stakes, major stakes that defined this moment, not just for South Africa, but for the African continent and other G20 members. And now to Cape Town, South Africa, we are pleased to welcome Madam Alia Veyes, who is an independent political and security risk analyst. You're welcome for the first time on the Global Insight platform.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited and pleased to be on Global Insights for the first time. I'm looking forward to a very fruitful discussion with my fellow panelists, and I'm very proud to be here as your kind of man on the ground in South Africa after a very proud and successful moment for my country.
Absolutely, a very great moment to note South Africa's presence in the world. Let's head now to the United States of America to welcome Kofi Don Agor, who is President CCLG Africa Ghana EPA NAP project ambassador. You're welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you, Madam. I'm so grateful and excited to be part of this discussions, and I must also indicate that we congratulate South Africa for hosting the G20 summit, and I think it went well. Thank you, and I'm grateful to be part of these discussions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we go to Spain to meet Dr. Enrique Rifollo, journalist and political scientist and analyst. Welcome. Welcome to the program.
Thanks a lot for your invitation to be here. I see a lot of familiar faces, so I am very glad, very honored to be here with all of you, and especially for talking about something constructive, because as you presented me, I am from Spain, from Europe, and the conversations in the current Europe are from a madhouse. But let's go.
Absolutely. That is just to show the interconnectedness of the world. And that is something that, Globus actually reiterate. The world is interconnected. How can we then chart the way forward to ensure that we mitigate the fragmentation or the conflicts dividing the global world? And together, let's right off straight away with this excerpts from the host President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa, listening to what he had to say. Then I'll come back to you, ladies and gentlemen, to enter into the analysis of the just ended summit.
South Africa's presidency marks the first time, as we have said, that the G20 has been hosted and held on African soil. We are truly honored and humbled by that. not only as South Africans, but as Africans as a whole. Recognizing the importance of this milestone, we have sought to place Africa's growth and development interests at the heart of the G20's agenda. The greatest opportunity for prosperity in the 21st century lies in Africa. Harnessing that opportunity will require a rather strong partnership between Africa and the G20, and indeed between Africa and the rest of the world. Recognizing our interconnectedness as a global community of nations, we have called for an end to conflicts and wars around the globe and for a just and comprehensive and lasting peace. This summit has taken place at a crucial time as calls around the world grow louder for progress on the imperatives of our time: to end poverty in all its forms and ramifications, to reduce inequality within and amongst countries, and to take urgent action to combat climate change. This year, we have recognized the growing debt burden that is faced by many developing economy countries as a major obstacle to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. The G20 has pledged to extend support to low and middle income countries as they confront debt vulnerabilities. Together, we must create a virtuous cycle of reduced debt, higher public investment, and more rapid and inclusive economic growth. When we become more successful, all of us, then the whole world becomes successful. At the heart of our presidency lies a conviction that the G20 must act boldly and act together to create an environment of inclusive growth, an environment of reduced inequality, an environment which will support sustainable development. South Africa has used this presidency to place the priorities of Africa and the Global South firmly at the heart of the G20 agenda. Building on the developmental agenda of previous presidencies in Indonesia, in India, and Brazil, we have prioritized the issues that matter most to developing economies. And in executing our task as the G20 president, we learned a lot from what Indonesia did, what India did, and what Brazil did. So in many ways, what we see having unfolded here was based on the foundations that those three countries of the Global South put in place. The G20 South Africa Summit Leaders' Declaration is more than words. It is a commitment to concrete actions that will improve the lives of people in every part of the world. Our agreement on a declaration during this summit demonstrates the value of the G20 as a forum that can facilitate joint action on issues of shared concern. Shared concern not only for the leaders, but shared concern for the peoples of the world. More than that, it reaffirms our renewed commitment to multilateral cooperation and our recognition that our shared goals outweigh our differences. Together, we must accelerate progress towards the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations and the Pact for the Future. We have laid the foundation of solidarity. Now we must build the walls of justice and the roof of prosperity. Let us move forward together, demonstrating to the world that we do have the capacity to confront and overcome the world's challenges through partnerships across society, and by remembering our common humanity, we can create a more secure, a more just, and a more prosperous world. And together, we can ensure that no one is left behind. I now say that this gavel of this G20 summit formally closes this summit and now moves on to the next president of the G20, which is the United States, where we shall see each other again next year. The summit is therefore closed.
And that was the president of South Africa. And we right off with you, Alia, who want to get a holistic perspective from you regarding the 2025 G20 summit. What can you read of the just concluded summit?
Great beginning question, just to kick us off. I think we as a country definitely we're seeing, from whether it's issue specific experts that dealt specifically with issues like debt sustainability, disaster resilience, energy transition, to media outlets, to international kind of experts. We as South Africans and as the South African government has definitely claimed our G20 presidency and the G20 Leaders Summit as a success. The fact that we adopted a declaration by overwhelming consensus from day one of the summit was definitely a success, but more so that success is rooted in several kind of wins, I would say. Number one is that several issues that we tabled at the start of our presidency, specifically debt sustainability for low and middle income countries, was firmly planted on the agenda with kind of legacy initiatives that we will see kind of go beyond South Africa's presidency in what hopes to be kind of cementing debt sustainability and debt restructuring for middle and lower income countries as a longer term issue that definitely affects all countries within the G20 and outside of it. Number two, I think a second kind of win that we would claim is that, more fundamentally, that while the US kind of lodged various kind of attacks on South Africa's presidency, from its thematic focus to various kind of progress points throughout its presidency, and eventually its boycott, the government kind of pressed ahead, and I think that was a big diplomatic win, showing the fact that we were kind of sticking to our guns of multilateralism as opposed to multipolarity and cooperation as a means of fundamental global problem solving. I think that has largely been, one might say, one of the biggest wins coming out of this summit is that we didn't give up, we didn't, falter by any means, and that it wasn't essentially us alone. It was the biggest show of diplomatic support I think South Africa has had since, for example, the fight against apartheid in the early 90s and in the Nelson Mandela era. Yeah. I think in that, and then going on to the kind of final point that I will touch on for right now is that the summit really kind of proved the importance and the value of diversified partnerships in a world that is, and I'm sure my fellow panelists will elaborate on this, but in a world where unilateralism is there's a really, really big push from it, both from the US but also from the Trump administration, specifically through things like tariffs, through things like cutting development finance, climate finance by any means. I think showing that kind of diversified partnerships is a viable and valuable strategy to overcome kind of any kind of or overcome the kind of, or mitigate, I would say, the consequences of this very inward push by the US. I think it's a really big win that South Africa has taken, but more so in a way that it's led by example for other middle and lower income kind of powers to show that we have convening power if we don't have, a comparable economic power to, our fellow countries like India, like China, like even Russia. So I think the choice of cooperation of over session really solidified multilateralism as a kind of a fundamental tool for all countries, big, small, developing or developed. And I think that's the main takeaway from this G20 Leaders Summit.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the holistic interpretation of the G20 summit. Of course, diversified partnership or cooperation. And in the same perspective with you, dear Punima, we know that from the speech of the President Ramaphosa, we can see that the global south has been leading the G20 over the years, and we saw that just concluded. In the preamble, we asked the question if the culmination of the 2025 G20 summit opened the way, or was it a litmus test for the multilateral platform. So what can you say is your own perspective regarding the just ended summit?
Clarice, this was very good speech at the closing remark of President Ramaphosa. It is a integrated African priorities into global agenda, focus on depth, sustainability, climate resilience, and development global perspective, emphasize the need of developing countries concerned to be central to G20 effectiveness, and showcase a shift in the forum's focus towards global south. So this I observed from his speech, because nowadays world is in turbulence and alliances are changing and new alliances are developing, and America is having their problem with all the alliances like BRICS, G20, G7, and all other international instruments. They are having problem nowadays. You heard so much about tariffs and so many other restriction on different countries, like Russia is passing through sanctions from long time, and Ukraine-Russia crisis is not stopping. America and Western world is not having any solution. Similarly, in Hamas and Israel, the disputes are continuing. So we don't have any solution. And if we observed on these problems, problem is conflict, how conflicts are developing at our borders. This is a big agenda. And we are investing our huge money instead of education, culture, and human development. We are utilizing our economic growth on the weapon industry, and we are killing our young people. So this is the new world, what we are observing from last 3.5 years, and no country is having solution. Now, what South Africa did during last few years, if we observe, South Africa came in the center of the focus of the world stage, because they organized BRICS Summit.
Absolutely.
And they invited all the global heads. And similarly, now G20 was very important. And I am observing during last 4 years, G20 is happening in BRICS countries. First Indonesia, then India, then Brazil, Malaysia, and now it is in South Africa. And similarly, BRICS summits are already inside the BRICS countries. So we are in the central stage of the world. And what America did, it is responsibility of America to send his representative or to come by himself, because America need more collaboration with global south. But they are not understanding. They are in their hegemony, in their controlling powers. They are saying that South Africa will not come in next G20. Why? Because we need to understand how world is moving and how new forces are developing, and we need cordial relation with the global South countries, this need to be understood by the Europe and American authorities. So what President Ramaphosa said was wonderful, and he gave very good message to the world, and South Africa prosperity and climate resilience and all the need of their people's development is first priority for South African government. So this is all important, that women, youth, climate, these things he focused, and it is really important that presidency and government should think about their people. This is the first priority. So
Absolutely.
I'm really impressed, and it was really good speech. And I hope world will take lesson from South Africa presidency of G20. Thank you.
Absolutely, like you've highlighted, including the African agenda or the African priority in the global agenda. And that goes to note that those are the tenants that are actually redefining the new world order, where we have shifting alliances. And in the same perspective with you, Kofi Don Agor, of course, as a climate change expert, this is one of the issues that we actually highlighted and included in the final declaration, which was unanimously adopted by all the members or the leaders of the G20 who probably who attended the summit. So from this perspective, what can we give or read of the agenda that South Africa set, not just for the country, but for the African continent as a whole, being the first to host such an event on its soil?
Right, thank you so much, and greetings to our viewers and listeners again. And first and foremost, let me say that I'm so happy and excited as an African for what South Africa has done. The President Ramaphosa's conclusion statement at the G20 summit re-emphasized an important multilateralism, cooperation, and addressing global challenges. And you really rightly heard it said about the climate issues. And you know, of course, climate is my area, and that is the area that I will be talking much more on going forward. And I'm of opinion that they just ended climate summit in conference in Brazil. In as much as we're expecting more actions to be taken as far as climate financing is much concerned, I mean, those are the areas that we're looking at the conference. So looking at the statement that was made by the South African president, I'm of opinion that issues of climate change should be one of the things that we should be looking at it, because climate is what affects all sectors of our economy. It's climate change that affects every facet of our life. When you talk of transportation, climate affects. When you talk of agriculture, climate change affects it. So there's a need for us to really look at climate-related issues. And we at the Global South having serious impact as far as climate change is concerned. And you can agree with me that when you talk of drought, when you talk of things that are challenging to the African people, I mean, if we start talking about it, we won't end it today. So I'm very excited and happy that the president did talk about it. And one other thing that other speakers have also indicated about the African agenda, where he emphasized that the development for priorities, including climate change, which I've indicated, and debt governance, and then trade and humanitarian assistance. These are the things that Africans also need. And then you also talk about global cooperation. And I think that we need to have that kind of partnership with, I mean, all of us have to get our partnership among ourselves to make sure that we are able to resolve conflicts, poverty, and inequality. And also, we build that kind of resilience. In Africa, we don't have much resilience. We haven't built much resilience. And that's the reason why when climate-related issues, climate drought affect us, it is very deep. It goes inside out very deep. So we need to build that resilience. And then you also talk about the African voices, where he reiterated that Africans' aspiration to become a strong, united, and influential in a global player as partners, it's very key, because we need to, as African continent, I believe and we all know that what we have as resources, it's what the world is always focusing on and depending on. So as Africans, if we do not unite, if we don't come out strongly to be able to push our agenda, we'll continue to be where we are. And I'm very happy the president did indicate it on that. So overall, I think that the concluding statement by the president is so significant at the G20 summit. And then promoting global cooperation is the key. So for me, I think South Africa has done well, and we must all applaud South Africa. And also look ahead to make sure that the right thing is being done for the people of Africa and for the global world. Thank you.
He actually lived the Ubuntu philosophy in South Africa during the Maiden summit of the group of 20. And back to you, Professor Jagdisha. We want to also have your probably your own perspective holistically of the summit, noting that India actually worked participated in ensuring that the African Union be granted the permanent seat at the G20, and noting the gavel was given to South Africa in India.
Thank you, madam. It is said that history is politics of yesterday. History is politics of yesterday, and politics of today is going to be history of tomorrow. So we have created history of tomorrow now. The G20 meet at South Africa, Johannesburg, has been historic one in more than one ways. Number one, it was the first ever G20 meeting held on the African soil. Number two, it was perhaps the first meeting where USA was absent. And thirdly, it was the first meeting where the gavel for the next meeting could not be handed over to the incoming presidency of US. So there are so many things historic about it, and really it's going to be really part of history. Now you see, G20 is a platform, and perhaps the only platform where the developing and developed economies sit together to find out solutions of the global challenges, to converse and share ideas. It becomes a bridge between developing and developed world. And this should not be berated by any of the powers. South Africa has been one of the founding members of G20 and now actively involved in BRICS, in IPSA, and so many platforms. So we must acknowledge that you can't take South Africa or the African continent lightly. It must also be noted that 4 consecutive G20 meetings have been held in Global South, that is Indonesia, India, Brazil, and South Africa. So it is in the imperative of Global North to support Global South, because now the narrative is shifting, as your program name says, narrative shift. Narrative is shifting, and sooner we acknowledge it and cooperate and collaborate with each other, better for the whole humanity. It is said that 75% of the future growth will come from Global South. So I take it as not only the success of South Africa, but the whole Global South to have stronger saying in the global agenda. The tone, the content, of Cyril Ramaphosa sir uh, in the speech says itself, and later in the official statement issued by the presidency of South Asia, that dignity is important for each and every country, and nobody can demean it by any means. It is, in fact, the power of G20 and the narrative that is being shifted, that you must know that although US strongly boycotted and had very discriminatory words being used by the president of USA towards South Africa, but none of the allies of USA boycotted. This is a point to be noted. EU was there, and later EU summit happened. Later IPSA happened. And IPSA is not only a group of 3 countries, they represent 3 continents.
Absolutely.
And 3 major economies. So it is better for everyone to acknowledge the narrative that is being shifted and to acknowledge the role that Global South can play in the welfare of the whole humanity. So I think this has been the major historic thing that has happened in this, which I wanted to point out, besides whatever declaration had been said. And another thing to be noted, that in spite of no participation from USA, the consensus was achieved in declaration. That is another point to be noted. So things are changing, and we are happy to make history on several grounds.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Professor Jagdish. Indeed, things are changing, the world is evolving, and we are living the new realities. Africa writing its own agenda in the global perspective. And now, let's have a holistic geopolitical interpretation of the G20 summit in Johannesburg with you, Dr. Enrique. What do you think? The outcome of the G20 summit, patterning particularly the unanimous signing of the declaration and adoption of the declaration by the member countries who attended this summit, in spite of the absence of the United States of America, one of the major members of the bloc, and also the superpower of the unipolar world. What can we say regarding this holistically?
It's a very good question. I have concrete to mention that along with the summit in Johannesburg, it was held a summit between African Union and European Union in a neighbor country in Angola. But this is another issue. It's important, but later. Okay, first issue, Trump. Trump, with his art of the deal, he is the deal maker in chief, the magic of the world. He wanted to be the main character everywhere, every time. He has to be in the main stage. And this is great for a reality show. But the real world is not a reality show. He is not an anchor in TV. And it's like, okay, Trump, we hear you. And you are useful for something? No, okay, get out. And it's absolutely crazy. Today, Trump declared some kind of closure of airspace in Venezuela. Okay, great point. Like no normal airlines, no traffic dealers. Nobody has to use the Venezuelan airspace. We have to remember also the threats against Nigeria. Mr. Trump was very cared about the killing of Christians in Nigeria, but nothing about in Middle East. by some reason. It's Mr. Magic Trump. And in the case of Johannesburg, he wanted to take out the bad powers as South Africa, but like maybe in the future, in the next G20, yes, maybe USA would be there, not South Africa, or maybe the global South can create their own G20 without USA and maybe without some other European powers, because in the European Union they are obsessed with the war. In the African Union, European Union summit in Luanda, in Angola, some days ago, yeah, they talk about great things about towards a prosperous and sustainable future. Okay, I don't know where is this future, because in the case of Europe, everything is related to a mobilization plan against Russia. Okay, sustainable future. I don't know, maybe tanks with solar panels or something. Areas of peace, security, and governance. Okay, another joke. And especially as regards migration and mobility. When I was reading the declaration, it was like, okay, European Union wants only from Africa cheap workforce. Nothing more. Okay. Crazy points. But that's the reality. And about G20, they were again like, okay, we have to push our interest. As another times in G20, there are like the G7 inside making their own lobby in the question. But the general provision, the declaration of the G20, it's very interesting: multilateral cooperation, macroeconomic policy coordination, global partnership for sustainable development, and solidarity. Solidarity, okay, very good concept, but now in Europe there is not like thing. And I would like to finish with special thinking. I mean, do you have to consider in Global South, in Africa, especially because we are here in an African channel, that if the West, I mean, USA, doesn't respect any other, neither the European countries, they don't respect anybody in the world. And the European Union authorities and many other presidents in Europe, they don't respect their own people. So you can't expect respect for African peoples or for Indian people, because they don't respect their own people. They are telling us that we are bound to a war. Now the limit is 2029, a war against Russia. In Germany, they are talking about this, and France is talking about mobilization, and that's the future in Europe, a war. Okay, so my recommendation for you, go away, run away very fast.
And bringing us to another problematic, to wanting to understand and to note, ladies and gentlemen, that if we can put together the holistic points pointed or presented, we can now categorically say that the G20 summit in South Africa 2025 opened the way practically for multilateralism, and particular focus going to the involvement of the global South. And this brings us to you, Aliyu, with this question, like, given the dynamics or changing diplomatic dynamics in the global world, do you really think that the tenets, the primary tenets of the G20 still hold, given the diplomatic fragmentation? We saw that between the US and South Africa. It started with, some months ago when a video was presented, which was later noted to be a fake video of a white genocide in South Africa. And also, we know the position of many African countries, especially in the war between Russia and Ukraine. So with all of these countries still being part of the G20, let's try to understand if the primary tenets of G20 still hold, given all of the developments in present day society. Hi, Halia. Please,
Sorry,
okay.
I'm going to answer your question in two parts. And the first is really going to deal with the kind of latter point that you mentioned about South Africa and essentially the onslaught it is faced by the Trump administration. And when I say onslaught, I really do mean a deliberate campaign of misinformation and disinformation that the Trump administration has lodged against South Africa. And it's, alleged human rights abuses towards a particular minority, white Afrikaner people in South Africa, and the quote unquote white genocide that Trump has kind of labeled as what's happening in South Africa. Now, when we talk about this issue, I must emphasize that South Africa is the first country in recent memory that has faced this level of a campaign of disinformation and misinformation from a power as big as the United States, directly from the head of its administration, President Donald Trump. And I think the way that South Africa, diplomatically has dealt with it deserves a kind of moment of explanation. That is to say that we've taken a very hardline stance in the sense of consistently proving factually that these claims that it is indeed misinformation and disinformation that is being lodged, that these claims are actually falsified, whether through kind of false media or false allegations sprayed within and outside of South Africa's borders. But number two, we very diplomatically said, please, our borders are open. Should you want to witness any kind of witness the reality on the ground, please do so. We've consistently kept the doors open for cooperation, for communication, and with trust building with the Trump administration, and unapologetically so. And I think it's very important to emphasize this as not only a diplomatic kind of reaction from the South African government, but a specific platform on which the South African G20 presidency has moved from. And that brings me to my second point, which is to say that the G20 fundamentally, while it has no, and I'm sure it's a repeated kind of criticism of the platform, that it has no kind of record of enforceable timelines, and its declarations and decisions are not by any means legally binding. So what that means is that the G20 is essentially a connective tissue for countries to come together, to cooperate, to collaborate on collective problem solving with issues from, as fellow panelists mentioned, from climate resilience and climate disaster prevention mechanisms to debt sustainability and restructuring. That is to say that the spirit of that cooperation, of that collaboration, of coming together is by no means being threatened by, for example, the US's boycott or its deliberate efforts to not only undermine the G20, but the very principles that South Africa kind of rooted its presidency in. So sustainability, solidarity, and equality, emphasis on solidarity when we're talking about cooperation. And I think that, as Professor Jagdish really emphasized, is that no other kind of partner or ally of both South Africa or the US kind of took a step back, because, the world, whether you're a developed country or a developing country, everybody knows that based off of the Trump administration's first term as well as its current term, there are, very material consequences and ramifications should you go against the kind of Trump administration's narrative. But, as I mentioned, Professor Jagdish really emphasized the fact that no ally of either South Africa or the US kind of backed off. In fact, very little airtime really in whether it's tweets or diplomatic statements from heads of states to, embassy officials and diplomats, little airtime was given to addressing the kind of claims that the Trump presidency was making, which in and of itself proves that not only are these claims not worth the time, of the senior most diplomatic officials of countries, but second of all, that the credibility and legitimacy of a platform like the G20 was of utmost importance in order to continue respecting, in order to continue for work to the work of the past year, and not only the past year, but really the past 2 decades of or a decade rather of the G20 really being a notable platform, to be respected and to be continued, whether even if it is in this moment.
Yeah.
I will say, just to close, is that I'm sure my fellow panelists have also considered the kind of very real threat and risk of the G20 being hollowed out under the presidency of the United States, which is not at all kind of premature. It's a very real threat and risk, given that senior diplomatic officials in Washington have said that the Trump administration's intentions for its G20 presidency are to really go back to the basics, and I quote that. Do we know what that really means? No, because the US has not yet kind of released any kind of agenda or even thematic focus for its G20 presidency. But I will very boldly be so bold as to say that should the initiatives that were launched during South Africa's G20 presidency, for example, the African Engagement Framework, or any G20 presidency, under the likes of India, Brazil, Indonesia, and Malaysia, should that work stop for the fact of the Trump presidency not giving it any kind of airtime or legitimacy or credibility to continue under its watch? It will be an act of kind of institutional vandalism, for lack of better phrasing. It will be quite detrimental to the middle and emerging powers that really rely on forums like the G20 to kind of stage certain issues like debt restructuring, which greatly affect the developing world. Those countries simply rely on platforms like the G20 and others to not only spotlight those issues, but to make real progress on kind of fleshing out what those topics are, what kind of debt restructuring really means in the grander sense when we're talking about responsibilities for not only developing countries who have to approach the International Monetary Fund or the World Bank, but for broader powers like European powers as well. I will say that, more proactively, and this is my final point, is that, should, as we saw over the last, week or two, we've seen that President Donald Trump has tried to actively disinvite South Africa from a future G20 forum next year in Miami, Florida. Number one, it's important to realize that, as my fellow panelists acknowledged, South Africa is a founding member, so there's no kind of legal precedent to disinvite a country.
Okay.
There's no real we can't even say that there's a language of invitations. As a founding member, you have a binding right to be there.
Okay.
So should South Africa for whatever reason not kind of be barred from participation in G20 activities beyond the summit, that's kind of another very real possibility. But my point is that proactively, I believe that South Africa should be thinking long term and consider the following G20 presidency, that's 2027, which will be held by the United Kingdom, which it has had historically good relations with, and consistently is the UK's strongest trading partner in Africa. And that's not only South Africa. As much as the conversation has thus far focused on South Africa and its success, it is kind of a vote of caution to my fellow panelists and other developing and developed nations, is to kind of look in the long term and not kind of respond reactively, but rather proactively. Because we've seen under Keir Starmer's presidency, they're far more open to what multilateralism means and kind of playing by the rules, so to speak, of existing multilateral and global governance institutions. So that's just a kind of proactive strategy going forward.
I will stay with you, Aliyah. From what you have said, we will want to understand the status quo of global leadership at this juncture, taking the case study of probably the diplomatic rift that we saw, the whole world saw, between South Africa and the United States of America pertaining the G20 summit. What can we say is the status quo of this global leadership in terms of the new perspectives of shifting alliances, new alliances, or new engagement with global South, global North, and other emerging powers?
I think, it is no secret that South Africa and the US diplomatic relations have consistently been strained over the past at least a year now. Strained in a way where it wasn't, one particular event, one particular kind of post on Truth Social. It's been a consistent kind of barrage of criticism, of discrediting, in a lot of ways, if I may be so bold as to say, humiliation of South Africa, of its, whether it's government or even its work on the G20. So as much as I mentioned, South Africa's kind of diplomatic strategy has been to counter these claims with facts, as well as to kind of keep the door open for communication. It can't be denied that our not only our diplomatic ties, but have been kind of really strained, but this has also kind of filtered into very real material consequences for our trade ties with the USA. And that's, most evident in, for example, suffering of our local citrus industry, which has really affected employment levels, to trade, to, a very big strain on that particular industry, and others. I will say that as much as South Africa, and it's, before I end that point, sorry, that has also seeped into kind of regional relations. We've got the AGOA agreement, which, by all means was not looking like it was going to be renewed by any means, simply because of the US's kind of, not only its poor view of South Africa, but its poor view of development finance and development cooperation in general. And again, I reiterate that it is the Trump administration's very inward-looking gaze that we're really seeing have very material consequences for not only its kind of target countries like South Africa, but entire regions, that depend on certain agreements or ties for economic benefit. When we're talking about, what this kind of means for kind of shifting alliances or kind of the survival of various nations, both South Africa included, I think this is where, and maybe my fellow panelist, Dr. Enrique, can really hone in on this point, is we're really starting to see a kind of emphasis on diversified partnerships. And this has really come out strongly for South Africa from the European Union, that have, from a European Union level to European Union members individually, like the UK, like France, like Germany, come out in favor of kind of strengthening existing diplomatic and economic ties with South Africa. This was, of course, reiterated at the 7th African Union and European Union annual summit that happened not too long ago. Again, a real emphasis on diversified partnerships that go beyond, simply diplomatic kind of handshakes, but really, how do countries kind of diversify their economic streams, so to speak, or their trade relations, and how does this and how does that kind of not only mitigate the kind of gap, I would say, or the kind of vacuum that the US has left in a lot of developing countries, including South Africa, but more so to make to kind of bolster individual countries' capacity to withstand things like conflict. Like, for example, many African countries were greatly negatively affected by the Russia-Ukraine war. Given that Ukraine is a really big provider of grain to many developing countries. So how do it's not only diversified partnerships to offset a Truth Social post from the Trump administration, but generally when we've got several conflicts from that which is occurring in Sudan to Ukraine to Gaza in Palestine, how do we offset any kind of diplomatic as well as kind of material consequences of that through diversified partnerships?
Okay, thank you so much, Alia, for that. And in the same perspective, we continue to analyze the stakes, but then we look at to what extent this will, bring a positive face to globalization, international relations. Coming back to you, Punima Anand, you quite mentioned about the BRICS member states who are actually part of the G20, and then we see the diplomatic feuds or contestation already among the group, derailing it from its primary objective. So, from the perspectives of the BRICS member states and the G20, what unique role do you think or believe that BRICS country can play in maybe re-echoing Africa's voice in the global agenda in line with decision making, especially as it comes to global organizations like the G20?
This is really very good question, Clarice, of the day, because the basic fundamental dimensions of G20 in South Africa was solidarity, sustainability, and equality. And this is also an agenda of BRICS summits, because equality and consciousness is the main important topic in our BRICS summits, because we are developing countries. South Africa, Asia, and many North American countries, they are developing countries. And if we observe from Second World War till 2025, countries get different levels for the development. We faced wars, we faced distinctions, because India divided by the Pakistan and Bangladesh, so many countries divided like Russia and Ukraine. So we faced many problems also, and all problems happens in developing countries. In America, there is no question of dividing. There is no question of tariff. They are ruling. They are deciding what we need to do, but they are not understanding what is our demand, what is our development stage. Because now this environment resilience is also very important, as our one of friend Mr. Coffee said, that environment issue for South Africa is for Asia is very important, because we are developing country. We need more bridges, we need tunnels, we need highways, we need so many defense development processes, hydropowers and clean energy. For that, we have to do our infrastructure development. But another side, United Nations and European world put up the international law for the green environment, green energy, green currency. So these are hammers on our development. What we need for our sovereignty, we should decide. And as you said in G20, role of BRICS, because our Prime Minister Narendra Modi was also present, Brazil President, and many heads of the BRICS states were present there. So it showcased the solidarity with the G20 of BRICS. So BRICS agenda is moving in G20, and South Africa played a key role, because only 1 year back they organized BRICS Summit, and now in 2025 they organize G20. So South Africa came on central stage, and they are playing key role for the humanity, for the global South development, for people. Because in Ramaphosa's speech, we observed that he specifically spoken about youth, women, and their people. So the leadership who is taking care of their soft power, women, youth, they are the right leadership. The leadership who is thinking about wars and weapons, it's not right time to think about that development. So we need solidarity, sustainability, and equality development. And this we observed in South Africa, G20, and in BRICS summits. So now upcoming BRICS summit will be held in India, and our Prime Minister were present there. We saw that he is always speak about Vasudev Kutumbakam. World is one family. So yes, we need to understand what is the meaning of family.
Absolutely.
What is the importance of family units? So we need to give clean environment to grow our families without fear, without consequences. We should not send our young generation to the wars. We need their cooperation into the next generation in artificial intelligence, because this era is closing and next era is starting after 2025. We will observe that mostly all companies, all infrastructure and all corporate development is happening based on digitalization, artificial intelligence. So all countries are having equal right to get the information and to do development for their future. It is not hegemony again for America or for United Nations or for European world. Now whole world knows the information as an open book. Through internet, you can get all information. So
Yeah.
this is a success of communication, technology, and innovations. And we are having our instruments to grow ourselves and for the betterment of our country. And
Thank you.
union of BRICS countries and Global South will really play a significant role in our upcoming future development with respect, with regard, and with solidarity, sustainability, and equality. Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. And of course, how practical is sustainability and equality in a world that is highly fragmented diplomatically. And this brings us again to you, Mr. Kofi, still on the aspect of the climate adaptation. The final declaration reiterated some of the key adoptions which have been made. I think the Paris Agreement was reiterated among others. So as an expert and given the importance of this, let's have for your point of view on the practical steps that G20 countries can take to ensure particularly their support for African nations in building disaster resistance against climate-induced or related challenges, as was mentioned earlier in your holistic interpretation of the topic.
Yeah, thank you so much for. I think rightly, and then other speakers are in the touch on this. When it comes to the issues of climate change, I think that for me, if you actually, or economists, in recent times, if you do talk about climate change, it means that you are far behind the discussion and conversation. So when it comes to its impact, I want to be biased to say that Africans, support has not been as we've been expecting, as much as I know that Africans also have a role to play. Make sure that we also adapt to the issues and then also have some best practices that will also help us to not to emit some kind of bad gases into the atmosphere that will bring us the climate-related issues. Yes, so climate is with us. It's not far from us. It's with us in an African president, an African head of state must make sure that we work hard to make sure that issues of climate change are dealt with. We must have budgets for our climate-related issues. All sectors of our economy must make sure that climate issues are well discussed at all sectors of our economy. And that is the way forward. That is what will really help us. G20 summit that was held, as I indicated, the issues of climate change that were raised are very, very hard. And we, as our network, are working to make sure that issues of climate change are dealt well. People understand what the issues are. But let me tell you that because we do not understand what climate-related issues are, we don't know what climate change issues are. Communication is a very big gap, and that is not the problem. So until we understand what the issues are, it becomes easy for us to be able to deal with issues of climate change. I believe most head of states in Africa, when we go for meetings, to discuss issues of climate change, it is important to re-emphasize the challenge that climate change is posing to people of Africa. And that is what the discussion should be. And once we are able to do that and we understand we are able to connect ourselves well, we have our partnership among ourselves, we'll be able to solve the issues of climate change. Now, celebrating 10 years, the Paris Agreement, the Kyoto Protocol, this particular COP that we are attending in Brazil was the 10 years of the Paris Agreement. And it's important to really look at this agreement as to whether we'll be able to achieve what we want to achieve or not. And I must say that we haven't been able to achieve what we've done some progress anyway, but we've not been able to achieve the goals and the target that we set for ourselves. So it means that at our next technical meeting that will be in Bonn, issues must be tabled, discuss it, and make sure that we are able to get conclusions, well-tailored conclusions that will help our economies to grow. Now, I did indicate that the global north have built a lot of resilience. So when it comes to climate shocks and climate issues that affect them, they are able to come out strongly. We need to build resilience. And building resilience means that put in place these things that when climate hits us, because it could be natural, when it hits us, we are able to come up from our challenges.
Yeah.
Until we do that, we continue to have the challenges being faced by climate change. Because whether we like it or not, as it's being indicated, climate change is with us. And we must work hard to make sure that we take off the challenges from the burdens that our people are facing. When we talk about agriculture, it's one big thing that is affecting us. Because you cannot say you want to grow your economy without having a strong agriculture sector in your economy. And that is way to go. So for me, let's redefine what climate change and these challenges are to us. How do we understand it? How do we want to fight the impact? Because the phenomenon in the global north will be different from the phenomenon in the global south. And that is what we must look at, so that we fight it according to that locations and how it's affecting us. And again, let me emphasize again that when it comes to the G20 summit that was held, I was again excited that climate issues was raised and it was talked about. But we should not leave it there alone. How do we make sure that we communicate issues of climate change to our people at the local level? Because the issues of climate change happen at the local level, and the local people do not understand. So I will say that the conversation is too high for the people, for ordinary person to really understand what climate-related issues are. So until we make sure that we strengthen our communication strategies, we strengthen our education as far as climate change is concerned, we will continue to talk about climate-related issues, because these are human-induced factors, human-induced activities that bring the issues of climate change. Yeah. So there's a need for us more education, more communication, have strategies for people to really understand what climate-related issues are. And every government must make sure that we make budget allocation for climate-related issues. That will really help us. Until we do that, I think we continue going around the circle, and we come back to the same thing that we're talking about.
Of course, it's necessary to contextualize the policies that will actually yield sustainable solutions. In the same perspective, but away from the climate issue, we'll come back again to one other aspect which we think defined the theme of solidarity in the G20 summit. We are talking about human diplomacy, and I appreciate Professor Jagdish if you actually throw more light or understanding on how human diplomacy relates with the summit of the G20 summit, like reflecting on the principles of the Ubuntu principle of philosophy that is a guiding ideology for Pan-Africanism and the African identity, which was actually emphasized at the summit, and how can probably multilateral cooperation foster the human diplomacy that will probably leads to inclusive growth for countries in Africa and maybe the global south at large.
Yeah, you are right, madam. The spirit behind the G20 need and the declaration at South Africa has been Ubuntu. That translates into I am because we are.
Sure.
And that means the importance of shared mutual coexistence. And that is what is again matches with India's philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that is, the whole world is one family. And in our G20 meeting in India, we had the slogan, one world, one family, one future. So we all share the future, and we sink or swim together. So we have to understand this concept of Ubuntu. And same thing was reflected in Prime Minister Modi's address also, highlighting a concept of integral humanism. That is, the whole humanity, the individual, the society, and the nature, they are all part of a whole, integrated into one system. And anything that is considered in the policy making framework has to consider the whole humanity as integrated whole. And that is what is, I think, multilateralism is also the concept about it. And the world is moving towards multilateralism very fast. And as Prime Minister Carney of Canada also reflected that the center of gravity of global economy is now shifting fast. So we have to understand that we have a shared future, and that was also reflected in the several initiatives proposed by Indian Prime Minister there. That is most important being skill multiplier initiative for Africa, with a target of training over 1 million trainers in Africa to guide in various skill sectors, and that will have a multiplier effect on the future generation also across Africa. And with around 60% of population of the African continent being youth, it will make a difference to the world at large also. So I think this concept of integrated humanism is something that has to be pursued, and with the aim that 3S, that is security, self-respect, and sovereignty. These three things are non-negotiable for any nation, and we must have respect the dignity of each and every nation, big or small, mighty or less powerful, and see it that since we have the spirit of Ubuntu, so we exist together. So India has the same concept, and we look forward to more such progress in the future on humanism being promoted. And I'm pretty sure I would like to mention one thing, that not everybody in US agrees with the whims and fancies of its president. So and we all agree about the unpredictability of his declarations. So it is in the interest of US itself also to integrate with global South and not have policies like what is being offered now. And what has happened? You see, the tariff regime was there, and it was feared that it will have great impact on the world economy. But what is the result? Not as much effect is being observed as was feared upon. And there has not been a widespread relocation of industries to US back. So things are moving, and humanities will take care of all the challenges in a positive, optimistic way. That's my view.
Absolutely. If humanity should be given priority, we need to revisit the preamble of our international relations to shift from power and firm to actually people-to-people diplomacy that will give priority to humanity, and I think that will be towards making the world a better place. And then to actually arrive at this position, which you just mentioned, Professor Jagdish, I think there is need to probably reassess or maybe relook the place of of power or influence in the era of multilateralism. I'm coming to you with this question, Dr. Enrique. Given the declaration and the stakes at the G20, we want to look at how probably world leaders can reevaluate the influence of power dynamics in the global setting of multilateralism and the new world order.
In my point of view, I think the world will be divided in two blocks, the unipolar world, Western side, and the rest of the world, the global majority, the multipolar world.
Okay.
I see the thing in this way because with these current presidencies in Western countries, there are no other option. They don't accept anybody else. They are only accept their own orders. And this is not from the West against the rest. It's the West against itself, because these Western politicians are against their own peoples and, of course, are against other voices in the world. When, for example, our wonderful leaders go abroad, they are like, no, you have to fulfill our orders. But fulfill. You are talking with China, with India, with other countries in Africa, with Brazil. And you are not the chief. You are only another country. But as we can say, this world order based in rules is the order of the Western world, the unipolar world. They are some kind of, they have nostalgia from the 90 decade, the end of 20th century, the unipolar moment of USA, but this had an end. They are not again and again in 1995. It's 2025. The world has changed. Absolutely. And for example, in the case of USA, by one side, they are always pushing their own narrative. They are it's even crazier. They are not shooting against the rest of the world. They are also shooting against Europe. It's not like funny, like a crazy joke. It's absolutely absolute madness. For example, about Canada, you have to become a new state of USA. Greenland, no more Denmark. We have to take Greenland from Denmark. Denmark, an ally from NATO. Okay, wonderful, magic. Or, for example, the Canal of Panama. No, we build them. So we build this infrastructure we have to take back because it's world order based in rules. And about other countries, no, you have to fulfill our orders because the threat of force. Oh, wonderful. Very solidarity, very world based in goodwill, in some kind of deals, and yeah, magic, wonderful. And in the case of Europe, the mobilization, the creation of an scenario of war. I will provide you an example. In the case of Spain, this week has been published a new national survey. 57% of people in survey are considering that we will have a war against Russia. Yeah, of course, if you are talking about this all the time in media, yes, people start to have a fear from the war. And in other European countries, it's the same. They are pushing for the military mandatory service. But what is the most important? What is the view for the future to other countries in the world? That Europe is bound to war against Russia. Okay, 6,000 nuclear warheads. I don't know which is the solution from Europe against these 6,000 nuclear weapons from Russia. Magic again, maybe. I don't know. I am not a magician. And in the case of USA, it's you have to fulfill our orders. You have to fulfill our orders.
Yeah.
India, you are a death economy, but we love you. And I can understand that the Indians are so confused. You are death economy, or we love you, India. And with the same with the rest of the world, the same deal making in chief. Okay, and you are the global hegemony in the world, and you are always making the Truman Show for the whole world is absolutely crazy, and other countries are trying to take the situation so serious because it's the future at the stake, not like some elections, maybe next year the midterm elections in USA, or maybe a lot of elections in European countries, and politicians are thinking in election, are thinking at short time. This is very important at short time, but the world needs big deals and at the long term.
Mm-hmm.
This is taken, I think, from leaders from the global south, from India, China, from Africa, from some leaders in Latin America, from Russia, but it's not taken in mind by Western leaders. They have only in mind short term or a war against 6,000 nuclear weapons. Okay, it's an absolutely two-world reality. The unipolar world by one side, the world order based in rules, and the multipolar world that they are trying to create a new reality based on real grounds, on real results, and especially I would like to finish with a mention, especially to Professor Jagdish, because he was talking about IPSA. This is absolutely familiar to you because you are Indian, but I was translating some news into Spanish for our Spanish-speaking audience about IPSA. There was a new axis in Global South with great Global South powers, India, Brazil, and South Africa. And people in the Spanish audience were like, what is this? We don't know. Yeah, you don't know because your media in Europe, they are talking only about war, about we are doomed, about the chicken flu, the big flu, and we are gonna die, and that's all. But the rest of the world are talking how will be the future for
Absolutely.
all of us. How are going to build a new reality? We have security problems in general, but especially food and energy. This is the main points in the talkings in Global South: food and energy,
Okay.
and to be sovereignty. And in our cases, no, we are bound to a war. It sounds crazy, but it's our total reality. We are doomed to have a war. That's all. Russia is not a country. Russia is an asteroid and is gonna crush us. And in the other side of Western world is Mr. Trump, the orange golem, making threats and trying to make wars against Venezuela, against Nigeria, against anybody else. But there is a new world, this multipolar world, and this is the reality, not a possible future. It's a reality in developing.
Absolutely, and in the new world cannot function with old policies. And this, let me come back to you, Professor Jagdish. From what Dr. Enrique just highlighted, we want to look at, still taking the case study of the G20 summit, because a meeting actually ends with declarations, key points highlighted, but then in reality we see the conflicts in the world tearing the world apart. let's look at how the realities of conflict, diplomatic conflict, and even physical confrontations has actually challenged or have challenged the concept of balance of power as defined by the international relations, where this theory is supposed to ensure, stability and some sort of equality among global powers. But in reality, this is not what is happening, because today we are talking about fighting the unipolar world or the Western hegemony. So how can we use this litmus test of this Africa's Maiden G20 summit to understand the theory of balance of power and see how to re-evaluate it or redefine policies that will meet with all the tenets of the new world order?
Yeah. No. You see, the reality, we cannot deny the reality that world is now at an inflection point. Because conflicts have multiplied, the trust has been eroded between communities, between nations, between regions, and economies are fragmented. And as Dr. Enric mentioned, the present crisis and conflicts, they have resulted into threat on three Fs, that is food, fuel, and fertilizer. And all these three are essential for human survival. So we have to see it as a challenge. We cannot prosper at the expense of some other nations. And we have to assume the responsibility of taking leadership, because we owe it to our next generation to present them with a world which is better than today, a world better to place to live in. This is our responsibility. And the problem remains that what I call is, it's not only fiscal deficit that is harming the development, it is more the leadership deficit and the trust deficit. So we require reforms. We require reforms in all the institutions, in United Nations, in World Bank, in IMF, and all other development finance institutions to become AI. And here AI will stand for all inclusive. So all our policies, all our plans should be all inclusive. Because if we are talking of the humanity, we cannot survive without shared prosperity. And that is what has to be seen. Global South is trying to push up its voice at the right forums, and I'm sure this will provide the necessary framework for a better world in the near future.
Quite imperative for ladies and gentlemen, just to note that if you are just tuning in, this is Global Insight brought to you by Globus, and we continue to look at the major stakes that marked the just ended G20 summit, Africa's first summit, as South Africa hosted in Johannesburg, where we saw leaders of the global world that unanimously declared that the absence of the United States is actually revealing to the world that we have gradually moved from the unipolar world to the world of multi-polarism, and this was reiterated by the likes of the Canadian Prime Minister and other leaders that attended. But then it is imperative that we bring the conversation down to earth for people to understand, so that it can shape the public policy of countries, particularly in Africa, and how to see define the agenda in terms of public policy and foreign policy to be able to meet the dynamics of the global world. And this, I'm bringing this question to you, Punoma, and then because when it comes to international relations, according to the research that we found, it's all about interest, and countries always put forth strategic diplomatic moves that will benefit their nations. So now let's look at how this will help redefine the public policy of Africa, knowing that as Aliyah highlighted, the country has been a victim of mass disinformation and misinformation in line with stakes of global interest. Punumanan, please, your mic is muted.
Hello, yes. So as we know that nowadays we are developing media system. Information and communication is easy in digital age. That's why African voice is coming to the central stage of the world. Now we are thinking about, as Alia and Professor Jagdish and Dr. Henrik told, and Kofi Anandji also, Kofi Dan also told about different part of the G20 summits focus areas. Okay, but point is that how African population is coming up on central stage, because Africa liberated very late, and African policies are always under control of Europe and United Nations and America. So now African people are getting information, equal rights, and equality information system through internet and artificial intelligence. And they are doing well. It is not easy to organize BRICS summit and continuously after that 1 year G20 summit, and inviting all diplomats or heads of the state and keeping your own agenda in the central stage. So Africa needs people-centric development. World politics is very high, turbulences are very high, economic disturbances are very high. But what African people need? Equal development to that heights. And African development is very low. Till now, they need food, they need fuel, as Professor Khatri said. They need energy for their development, agriculture. They need their houses. It is so low level that because they didn't get opportunities for the development during last 80 years, their development time is very low, very less. So we cannot compare African countries with America. And American agenda cannot be placed on African countries. So this need to be understand well in multipolar world or bilateral relation or multilateral relation, that development should be human centric for the benefit of people, and how we can make our lives better to live on earth. This should be the agenda. This should be the focus. And now this we can do through artificial intelligence age, because we can get equal opportunities to educate our people, equal opportunities to develop our agriculture opportunities, our energy opportunities, and our international relation from local to global. Because our Prime Minister Narendra Modi always raised this voice, Vasudev Kutumbakam. So means we have to develop our local people towards international development level. So local to global and global to local need to be make balance. And when we will develop our strategies, our policymakers and our developers, that they should think about last mile person at the ground level, then real development will happen. Then really we will say that yes, we are doing equitable development for our sustainable future. So this thing need to be focused by the policymakers. And now, as I am observing during last 10 years, this BRICS summits and G20 and other alliances forums are happening in the world. They are becoming more towards governments. People participation is not very equitable. Government participations are higher, diplomats' participation is higher, or some economic and big companies' participation is higher. But at the level of people, if we see, this participation is low, because if these are international forums, they should provide opportunity to human-centric development and human organization, local organizations, and we should focus on nature. Environment resilience is important, but we are focusing in agriculture, yes or no? We are focusing on smart cities, high-rise buildings, but we are not focusing on agriculture. And in agriculture also we are diverting towards corporate agriculture. So one company or one big giant will do the agriculture. He will take small lands of the farmers. So farmers' freedom, farmers' rights are also going. So we need to care all these natural things in our life. If we will lose the nature, if we will lose the people, then there's no meaning of life on earth. So it is important that scientific technologies and innovation should be useful for the last mile person to live better on this earth. This is my words, and always I focus on human centric development and natural life on earth for our peaceful and happy life.
Indeed, when it comes to development, we work locally to the global, and of course, some people feel also note that when it comes to probably defining policies that will guide a nation, there is need to understand the international dynamics to be able to draft policies that will balance the narratives on the ground. And still talking about the energy level, I quite remember that the European Union under von der Leyen actually highlighted that Africa has been, relegated in terms of ensuring this development in energy, and announced 100 and I think 50 billion euro for investment in energy, renewable energy across the African continent. With you, Mr. Coffee. So, how do you think of the African continent? Of course, the G20 summit has been hailed as successful, but then let's look at how Africa can be more probably useful within, because at times there's some sort of there's always a contradiction looking at the level of development across Africa, and then you see that there is a lot of diplomatic progress, but then it doesn't to an extent relate to the livelihood or the standards of the population that we highlighted, or the expert already highlighted. So now we're looking at Africa transforming, Africa taking to the next level, but that cannot happen without the industrialization or probably a strong energy that will propel the continent. Let's now look at how, given its position already at the global arena, hosting international events of great magnitude, what strategies or parameters can countries use to redefine internal policies that are very firm and practical enough that will solve the internal problems of the African continent?
Yeah, thank you one more time. And I think the other speakers have really said it right. When it comes to rejuvenating ourselves as far as energy is concerned, and putting more energy in all sectors of our economy, I think first and foremost, and we continue to say, is that we need to, in fact, even our language is a barrier to the African development. And I know it is a strategy of the Europeans and Americans not to make sure that Africans do not speak one language. And that's a big problem. I'm in Ghana. I moved to the next door neighbor, Ivory Coast or Togo, and I can't speak French. How do we develop? Unless I go to Nigeria or Cameroon or whatever. But immediate people that are surrounded by me, Other I speak English, they speak French, and we are not able to understand each other. So that should be another point that we should be looking at. For us to develop, we must have, because when you want to divide the people, it means that when they speak different language, you're going to divide them. So we need to look at that. Apart from that, partnership and collaboration is the way. We need to partner ourselves. Some years back, just some few years back, I think there was a government in Ghana that was talking about gold for oil exchange. Something like a barter trade. Ghana was going to give them gold and they're also going to give oil. And I think it's a very good policy. What do you have? What do I have? What do I bring on the table? What do you also bring on the table? So you have this, I have this. With Jojo, you have half of it, I also have half of it. And we are able to satisfy each other. And that is a partnership. That is a collaboration. So there should not be competition among African countries. Once we want to compete, then it means we are not getting anywhere. But rather, let's find a common ground to make sure that what you have, what I don't have, you also give me what I have. And but we are not doing that. And that is what is creating a lot of problems in Africa. Africa can make it, but until our leaders realize that we need to support each other, we need to help each other, that is what is going to happen. And I always say that Nigeria must get it right. When Nigeria is able to get it right, all African countries will get it right. I'm sorry to say it, but that's a fact. Because we know what it can do. We know how the Nigerian economy, when it crumbles, it affects all of us. And we must help each other. We are not supporting and helping each other. And that is the reason why we continue to be in trouble, we continue to be challenged, we continue to face the challenges that we are facing. So, madam, for me, I think that African, as it has been said already, yes, we have come of age, we have liberation. We must realize that no one will develop Africa for us unless ourselves. Sure. And that's the reason why I'm so happy for South Africa to stand on its ground to say those are the things we think we should do to make sure that we have a G20 summit successful. Forget about US. US want to do its own thing. They have their own agenda and whatever. Let us not be looking at them, but rather let's look inward. We can develop Africa ourselves because Europeans develop Europe by themselves. Americans develop America by themselves. Why can't we do the same? I want to challenge all African head of state that let's come together and let's fight for the common liberation of activities and things that is not helping us. The challenges that is affecting us, let's address them. Poverty, corruption. Let us stop the winner take all, but rather let's see ourselves as one people. I am in Ghana, but I'm not too sure I can just take my vehicle or fly from Ghana to all other African countries. Why? I need to get a visa before I get to Rwanda. I need to get a visa before I get to Kenya. Do I need to get a visa before I go to South Africa? I need to get a visa before I go to, why? Why should it be so? It should not be so. We should be able to say that we take off all the barriers that will make us to be able to trade among ourselves. Sure. We have said this on several occasions, but we have not been able to implement it. Look at West Africa. West Africa have challenges that will be able to say the West African community, ECOWAS, should be able to take off all barriers that will help us to develop. We've not been able to do it. We talk about ECOWAS currency, common currency for ECOWAS countries. We've not been able to implement it. African Union must make sure that we get it right. Until we get it right, we will continue to make all these statements, we'll continue to make good statements, we'll continue to have good speeches, we'll continue to have people making statements, and we would not be able to develop. So until we set those priorities and agenda for ourselves and we will work towards it, we'll continue to be where we are. So unity is the first thing for us to look at it and make sure that the thing that will help us to develop faster. We talk about energy, renewable energy. Let's look at it. What can we do? Look at the sun. It shines in Africa. And we are not making use of it. How it happened? But rather, we will fancy so many other things personally. to head of state,
Mhm.
but the people at the grassroots level are suffering. Please let us look inward. We will be able to do it. And I'll
Absolutely.
continue to say, as I've been saying it on your platform, that African people are the same people that can help to develop Africa. Also, we look within, we will not be able to get anywhere. Thank you.
Indeed, African solutions to African problems, and this can be found in a strategic positioning of the country and continent and policies. With you, Dr. Enrique, before you leave, we would love to have your probably your analysis on mechanisms of that countries, especially developing countries, can use to be able to survive under multilateral engagement, or why not bilateral engagement that will not see us in the next 5 years talking about being cheated, but then the rules of the game are now being actually noticed and studied by the people, thanks to the internet and the plurality of the media organs. We already see that there is some sort of a compromise when it comes to that. So what strategic practical mechanisms are you proposing for countries, especially developing nations, to be able to survive in the era of multilateralism?
Yeah, I consider the most important point is to search for concrete new allies, new strategic allies. There are a lot of countries in the global south, in the global east, which with which African countries also share the same problems, the same necessities, the same needs. So it's time to change the focus from Western countries, Western world, because they are not even neither the top technological countries. And this is very important because in other times, okay, the industrial power of Western countries, it was overwhelmed power, but now this is not like that. There are a lot another countries very important, like for example the rising East, China, with India, with a lot of Southeast countries, the countries of ASEAN. They are also eager to a bright future together in the different circles of engagement. So in the case of African countries, of course, there are a lot of necessities. The question of terrorism, for example, in my case from Spain, I am from Spain, so it's a part of it. But I remember to our audience that the Mali conflict, the Mali war, is closer to us than Ukraine, for example. Mm-hmm. From south of Spain, it's only 2,000 kilometers. To the front of Ukraine is 4,000 kilometers. So yes, of course, this is a close issue to us. And we can provide, we change our government, democratically, of course, we can offer our solutions, our projections, we can engage in our common bright future. But in the current case, the globalist European Union and the European countries under globalist, they are only like, Africa is a supermarket of resources. If these people dies in hunger or in a war, we don't care, it's the problem, but take the resources. If they die, if they are suffering from anything, not our case. Because they are also trying to make to our European peoples the same. We are not people, we are objects to them. So we need a special change inside. But in your case, in your African case, it's a time for re-engagement to other new rising powers with you can share real common values, real common expectatives, real common multipolar vision. I mean, the respect, like we are not, the question in Europe is, we are, or in all the West countries, we are here in the top of the development, moral and industrial economic development, and the rest of the countries are down of it. So it's some kind of two classes in the world. But there are other countries that, yeah, of course, we are different, but this means nothing. This means only we are different. That's all. And we can share the best from us. Not like, oh, my things are better than you. No, my things are mine. Your things are yours. That's all. And let's engage in real content, in real respect and real results. And I think this is my best approach for your program, and especially again for your invitation, and my special salute to the guest.
Absolutely. It's about engaging strategically to ensure that it benefits the population. We're almost culminating with the program. I will come back to you, Professor Jagdisha. Looking at the way forward, we always end with what you envision as a probably solution towards solving some of these problems which now come to affect declarations, final declarations arrived at after such an important meeting like that of the economic bloc, the G20. So now, what the question is, what should we expect next year during this summit in the United States of America? And Europe has already shown support for South Africa, patterning the declaration coming from the United States of America, and they showed this support, reiterating that it is already affecting the USA internally and not South Africa. And it now brings us to asking this question, how this will affect the internal policies of the United States of America in terms of its bilateral relations or maybe diplomatic relations with countries in Europe and elsewhere.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. I would like to quote Mahatma Gandhi in this respect when he said, in the context of the fight between dominant and underprivileged societies,
Yeah.
Gandhiji mentioned 4 stages. First, they ignore you. Then they laugh at you. Then they fight you, and then you win. So I think these are the stages that we are passing through, and I'm sure winds of change are blowing, and things are being realized. I would like to quote appreciate some statements and actions by Captain Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso, and recent happenings in Mali and Niger this week. Things are changing. You are going to assert yourself as Africa, as one continent, one nation, and that is going to happen. But it will take time. And as Purnima Madam said, that the differences between African and other parts of the world, they have to be bridged by through education, skill development. So being an educator and trainer myself, I think that is the best way to develop a society, by raising the level of competence as well as confidence of its people. And I'm sure that's going to happen, because for the sake of humanity, we should stop seeing nations as just markets and people just as objects. So that should be our philosophy, and I'm quite optimistic that things will be quite better by the time of next G20 meeting, and things will change for the better. Thank you.
indeed things will change for the better, and then we continue to analyze the relevance of nations and decision making or global decisions making with you, Punima Anand. When we analyze first of all, because according to Pundit, the fact that countries unanimously signed the final declaration or adopted the final declaration, it actually sent a strong message to the world that things are changing. And so we want to probably live by analyzing those countries that have marked their relevance in the new world order, reshaping the global structure in terms of the economic cooperation, or maybe the financial cooperation, and even diplomatic cooperations, which are shifting drastically, and new countries or emerging countries are also having their voices heard globally.
Yes, now reforms are happening, and diplomatic alliances also shifting. Now, Russian sanctions created new momentum in the world economic system, because now we can understand Venezuela, Iran, and many other countries, they were suffering from long time. And now Russia is suffering since 3.5 years from the sanction. So now world new reforming countries are thinking what will be their future. So they are thinking more towards bilateral trade, local currency trade, and reforms in their colonial system democratic phases. Now new democratic phase is also developing after digitalization, because people understand their rights, and all countries need to give support to their people to win the democratic system. So before, I think if we divide the world before COVID and after COVID, we can understand that before COVID, democratic system was the hegemony of Western world. And after COVID, when digitalization happened, people understand that they can be controlled by one system, and countries wants to depart from that one hegemony system, and they are diverting towards their own local empowerment of their women, youth, and their villages, agriculture, their local handicraft economy. So nations are understanding, small countries are understanding, and Africa is upcoming economy of the world. It is a continent and whole world understanding. Russia is also making their reforms for the Africa collaboration. India is also making new reforms for Africa collaboration. So world is changing. China is expanding, and China gave very big $1 billion support to Africa infrastructure development. So now world is changing. We are not dependent on United Nations, World Bank, America, or Western world. We are having our own strength to grow. So I think reforms are very important, and we are reforming for our people's development. And South Africa and African continent is playing very important role to grow and to coexist with the existing world.
Absolutely.
So it is important, and I think media and artificial intelligence and digitalization will play very important role for the upcoming economy and upcoming growth of Africa.
Absolutely enshrined in the future of multilateralism. We are going to round off with you, Mr. Coffee, and of course, still looking at the importance of maybe global cooperation, which is reinforced in the philosophy of multilateralism, and how can this be a catalyst or an instrument to fight inequality and ensure global representation of countries, especially as they're looking forward. We're moving towards 2030, which is the deadline set by the United Nations towards attaining the Sustainable Development Goals agenda. But then we want to look at how the global contestations in terms of politics and geopolitics have actually revealed the lapses of this international organizations in solving global problems or interconnected problems. So let's get your understanding or probably your analysis on the future of multilateralism in solving interconnected problems.
Yeah, thank you so much. So going forward, I think that we from the global south must first of all understand that when you talk of multilateral development, when you talk of multi-corporations and international corporations, we must first of all understand what our bargaining is and what our bargainings are. So that when you're going for agreements and you're going for discussion, you know exactly what you are going in for. But most of the time, because there's a lot of poverty in Africa, we go with empty-handed and then we're sort of trying to beg. But I tell you, and we all know that African resources, the natural resources, no continent can match us. So moving forward, let's make sure that we as African leaders or African leaders going for multilateral, conversations and what have you, must first of all know what they're about. Must first of all have something on the table, put things on the table, have that kind of, strategy or structures that will help us to be able to bargain well. Because China did it, he ignored all over global issues and deal with issues in their own way. And that's why China is where he is now. So Africa must also rise to make sure that when we are going for bilateral talk, bilateral issues, we have issues to talk with and table it well. Mm-hmm. And have one mind, one understanding. It will be very sad, it will be very bad for one African leader to be lured into something else and then give him or her, an African country, something that the others do not have, by way of maybe buying them. I'm very sorry to say that. But most of the time, these are the things that really happen. So for me, going forward, the word that all of us must have it at the back of our mind that we should have a bargaining power. We should have a bargaining power. We should know exactly what we are going in for. Until we do that, we won't get anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Of course, Africa has a bargaining power. It is imperative to make laws or rules that will propel the bargaining power. We're talking about the continent being a hub of resources that the global world needs. We're talking about a continent that is having a large population in the diaspora, which is a reservoir for the global, probably the practical transformation of the continent. And we are also looking at Africa with a vibrant young population that is ready to meet up with the challenges of the world. But then Africa needs to redefine its political agenda that suits the interest of Africa first, and also see it to not to go subtly, but then will go faster towards meeting the other actors on the table of decision making that will actually define the future of the continent. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, we are going by putting in mind that the G20 summit that concluded in Johannesburg, South Africa, served, of course, as a litmus test for multilateralism that is already ongoing across the global world. This was evident with the statements coming from world leaders that attended the meeting by adopting without objection the declaration it also signals that, of course, Africa's voice is already being heard at the international level. We are also urging that great actors and even the media actors or civil society and other stakeholders should stay informed, because of course there is quite a polarization in terms of information that is across the world. It is imperative to stay alert, understanding the critical international dialogues that can now serve as a preamble for countries to redefine their policies in this era of multilateralism, to engage with organizations that promote, the Ubuntu philosophy, and also ensure approaches that will respect sovereignty and leads to mutually beneficial engagement or relationship. And lastly, advocate for policies that encourage collaborative solutions to global challenges. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, it is on this note that we're going to draw the curtains into today's edition of the discursive, informative program Global Insight, while I take this time to appreciate the panel of experts for the in-depth analysis pertaining the stakes, unique stakes that defined the G20 summit of 2025 in Africa, in Johannesburg, South Africa. And subsequently, we'll come to continue to discuss issues of importance so as to continue to write the right agenda for the global world. Thank you so much. And also thank you, Adrian, for ensuring that the production was smooth. Have a splendid weekend in the company of our transmissions, and see you next time.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for the opportunity, and thanks to all the participants. It was a good learning and sharing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I also thank all of you for well-done conversation, and I think we will continue to make sure that the right thing is being done for Africa to come out from these challenges. Thank you to all the panelists. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. See you soon.
Okay. Enjoy yourselves.
Bye, Clarissa.
Thank you.
This program was brought to you by Globus.